Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Where we left off, I was waiting to get the time sert kit so I can go ahead and start fixing the fuel rail mount holes. That did arrive in the mail, so that's what I'm going to start working on here today. Also, a couple updates. One, you see there's a big empty spot here. I went ahead, I did sell my GT500 yesterday, so that is no longer part of the fleet. That one is going to be missed, but when I bought this car, I knew I was going to have to sell the 500 to make some moves, or make some room. On another note, I went ahead yesterday and ordered a few parts for this. I did order the vent hosing and a couple of defroster ducts so I can go ahead and finish off everything for the heater system. So I'll have, 2 defrost vents, one on each side for the windshield, and then enough ducting to also run one duct over to the floor on the driver's side to give floorboard heat. So that'll be coming in the future. I also did get the Cobra badges for the front and rear because this car doesn't have them. And then I did get the proper AC steering wheel emblem. So that stuff is all on order. For anybody unfamiliar, this is what the time sert kit looks like. It comes with a drill bit, a tap, a little bore tool to open up a lip on the edge of the hole, and then the installer tool. And what you're doing is installing these little threaded pieces. It's a 1/4-20 on the inside, which is what those holes should be, and then the outside is whatever the kit determines it to be for the tap that it comes with. So you drill a hole, tap it, install this, and then you have a good thread to use for the bolts to hold down, in this case, the fuel injector rails. So this is what I'm going to be working with to repair the 2 holes that are damaged in the GT40 lower intake manifold. All right, so here is the one on the passenger side rear of the intake manifold. Everything, I drilled it, I countersunk it, I tapped it, and then I installed the time sert, so it is now in place. So we are all set on this side. So we should be good to go here. The one on the driver's side front, however, there just wasn't enough material to work with. I'm pretty sure you saw in the previous video that it was chunked up and there was a big chunk missing. So what I did is I mixed up some JB Weld, quick weld, and I basically am making a new boss out of JB Weld. So that's currently hardening. Once that gets fully set up, I will go ahead and drill, tap, and put that one together on that side. So that's where we stand as far as fixing these threads goes. All right, update on the driver's side. As you can see, I went ahead and I drilled the hole in the JB Weld. It's still a little soft though, so I'm going to let this harden for a while longer before I try tapping it or anything, but I at least have the hole drilled and then the countersunk done, so I can tap it, put the insert in at a later date or later time. And then on the rear one, which was fine, I went ahead and just cleaned it out with the tap and put the bolt in there. So I'm gonna use these new bolts, just that way they all match. I only had a mismatch set from what was previously in here. So the 2 on the passenger side are all set, just waiting, like I said, for the JB Weld on the driver's side to harden. Other thing I was messing around with, I went and I did run over all the intake bolts again just to retorque them another time. I did get a slight bit of movement out of a couple, so I went through that sequence just a couple more times just to make sure everything was good and snug. And then I put the heater core lines in place, bolted them down, and then started looking at options for hoses that are going to go off of the hard lines through the holes that are in the firewall and then back into the passenger compartment. The problem I'm running into is the existing elbows that I have from the heater. They're both 90 degrees and they're both kind of long. The one that is closest to the firewall with that on there, it pretty much comes down and covers that top hole. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do, and what I went ahead and did, is I went on Speedway Motors website and ordered a 45 degree as well as their 90 degree, because it looks like it may be a little bit shorter than the ones that came with the unit. So I got a couple new hard lines, and then I also got a length of molded 5/8 heater hose just to have that in case I need it for modifying anything. Kind of have an idea of what I want to do. I'm thinking maybe I can use the 45 on that one that's closest to the firewall and then kind of have the hose loop around a little bit and then tie into the bottom hole. And then I could use the 90-degree and mount it at an angle to go into the top hole in the firewall, and the lines could crisscross over each other. So that's my plan as far as the heater lines go. Just now have to wait on the parts to show up before I can actually implement it. So since I got hung up waiting on the JB weld to dry and couldn't do much more with the heater core stuff until those parts come, I decided to start swapping out the injector connectors to replace the broken ones. So got the driver's side completely done. You can see on the new connectors, I used those solder splices that I have and then wrapped everything in electrical tape. You can see this one I just finished, haven't wrapped it in tape yet, but I used the solder splices to connect the wires properly. So got the driver's side done. I'm probably gonna call it a day for today. I can start tomorrow, get the other side done, and then I'll tap that JB welded hole and hopefully be able to get the fuel injection system put back in, get the wiring run where it needs to go, and continue on from there. Maybe get the distributor back in, as well as the front water tank, get that cleaned up, put the new thermostat in, and we'll go from there. Okay, it's the next day. JB Weld has hardened, so I'm going to go ahead and that's the first thing I'm going to tackle today is to tap that and see if I can get that time sert installed there, and then I should be able to get the fuel rail reinstalled in the engine. This morning also went online. I ordered some cushioned wire clamps for fixing up some of this loose wiring in the front end and the rear end of the vehicle. It's just kind of dangling. I've shown that in some prior videos, so I want to go ahead and clean that up, get rid of the crimp connectors and use some of those nice solder connectors, clean that up, put some wire sheathing over it and whatnot, just to dress it up a little bit better, and then I can go ahead and use the clamps to tie it into the frame square tubing and whatnot, just to keep it off the wheels. So that will be in an upcoming video once I get those parts in. But yeah, like I said, right now I'm going to start working on this time sert, and then I also have to swap over the connectors for the fuel injectors on the passenger side of the engine as well. And then I can probably start getting to work on the front of the intake manifold, getting the thermostat installed, and the reinstalling the water reservoir as well as the distributor. And here we are, job done. Threaded insert is installed and in place. So I'm going to go ahead now and get the fuel rail put back into place and bolted down, and that'll be one more thing off of the list. And the fuel rail is now reinstalled. I used some bolts that I had laying around that were the right length and pitch, just to have something uniform, because like I said, I only had 2 of the original bolts. The other things were just whatever random stuff the person who stripped these out had put in there. So now it's the same bolts in all 4 holes. Everything is down, tight, and ready to go. So fuel rail off the list. Now I'm going to go ahead and work on replacing the connectors on the other side of the wiring harness. And that's another job done. Went ahead and got all the terminals completed on the harness, so the injectors are all plugged back in. Also went ahead and got the distributor in, started wiping things down a little bit with mechanics towels that I have. I got the tub towels where they have actually cleaner on them. I've seen other people use those in the past and they work pretty good for cleaning up engine parts. Distributor's in. I'll have to retime it, but it's as close as it was. I had marked it before I pulled it out. I was thinking about the water pump leak that I thought I had, and I did notice that it looks like the thermostat housing was actually leaking the entire time. There was water sitting in on the top of the water pump. I remember noticing that when I started pulling things apart. I'm thinking that's actually what I was seeing, and it was just running down the back and just ever so slightly dripping off the bottom of the water pump. So I'm going to leave it alone at this point in time. I'm not going to bother pulling the pump. I'm going to keep an eye on it, see if it's if I notice any wet spots, once everything's back together. But yeah, I'll take that chance right now. It looks like the pump is, pretty well sealed and everything the way it was put on. So I am really thinking it was just that thermostat housing. It was just gooped together with silicone. Also, one of the hoses, it seemed like it could have been weeping a little bit as well. So gonna just put everything together as is and leave the water pump alone at this point in time. So just gonna start, getting back to putting all the pieces and parts back together. A few things I forgot to mention in the previous clips that I thought I'd just cover real quick. When I did reinstall the distributor, I did replace the O-ring with one that came with a gasket set. The one that was on there was basically hard as a rock and fell apart into about 4 pieces when I just went to try and pry it off. So that has been replaced. Other thing I did want to add as well is the 4 bolts holding on the fuel rails. I did put anti-seize on the bolts before I installed them. That's probably your best bet if you're working on one of these to avoid galvanic corrosion between the steel bolts and the aluminum lower housing or lower manifold. That is what causes the issues where they tend to corrode internally and it'll freeze up the bolts and whatnot. So make sure when you are doing the fuel rail bolts on your builds or whatnot that you do put anti-seize on the bolts when you install them into the aluminum to avoid any corrosion issues. All right, so I started to mess around with the expansion tank that was mounted up in the engine bay to put it back on the vehicle. And as I was cleaning the glop of silicone off of the back of this, I realized this is an O-ring style housing that was just gooped on to the engine. In looking at the way it's designed, it's a multi-piece design. There's supposed to be an O-ring on this part, which then slides through the hole here, and then this whole assembly bolts to the front, and then there's supposed to be a nipple on here that the hose would go to in a normal application. Previous owner, it looks like they found this expansion tank, I'm not sure what brand it is, and then had the water hose nipple welded to the tank. So I'm kind of in a position now where this thing is so gooped up with silicone, the grooves are full of silicone. Digging that out with a file or with a pick or a wire brush or whatnot is just going to scratch this aluminum. And then I'm worried that we're going to have sealing issues due to that. So I think this has been ruined at this point in time with all of the silicone that's on the housing. The good thing is I found the manufacturer online, the CSR. They still make these housings. So what I'm probably going to do is order a new housing with O-rings. And just to order the O-ring set from them is $20. The housing's $115. I'm going to order the housing for a 1 1/4 hose nipple, which that's what this size is, that's welded on. I can get the new housing with the new O-rings, replace the O-rings, or replace this O-ring, which will be in the set that'll come with it, and then just screw this into the new housing and then bolt the housing onto the block with a thermostat. So I think that is where I'm going to end this video at this point. Going to be waiting on that part now. So I was really hoping to have this car up and running by next weekend, the holiday weekend for Memorial Day. It was kind of my goal to have everything up and running so I could drive it. Not sure if I'm going to get the parts in time to do that. We'll see. But I'm kind of at a standstill as far as getting the engine back together until parts come in. I'll be waiting on this part. I'm waiting on the fittings for the heater core stuff. Waiting on the hosing for doing the defrost off of the heater core. So yeah, pretty much just stuck waiting on parts at this point in time. So I'm gonna end the video here. If you're enjoying what you're seeing, please like, please subscribe, please click that notification bell. There's going to be a lot more coming up on this car as time goes on. Thank you for taking your time to watch the video, and I hope you have a great day.